Welcome back, guys. This is Gaming with Austin, and today we are on part 2 of Futuristic Apartment, Type 3. As soon as this game loads up. Once this loads up, good. Now, I'm doing it like this because I can get more work done faster if I do it like this. apparatus. With this method of doing this, things can get done more quickly. We'll see. Even if you're consuming good quality calories, you shouldn't... the only way how you can gain muscle while fasting, even if you're consuming good quality calories, is to be on steroids. That's really the only way of doing that. What if we started imagine if we started imprisoning people just for not doing their chores, like putting them into prison camps. Families would be torn apart. In North Korea, if you don't worship the leader, you go to jail. In fact, go to a prison camp. You know, there's the threat of the death penalty for leaving the country, for defecting. People still try to defect regardless. 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 All cases of anorexia come from a desire to get extremely thin. Sometimes it's out of a desire to get extremely lean. Sometimes it's out of a desire to get as lean as possible. Like in my case. What I'm trying to do is get as lean as possible. But if I was walking and suddenly doing a workout and suddenly I heard a crack in my arm and I realized I broke my arm, I realized that it was because my fat percentage was really low. That was causing the bone fracture. That caused my bones to get so brittle. My doctor would have no choice but to put me on Remeron. As a result of that. Because, you know, having a low fat percentage can actually increase your risk of osteoporosis and other bone diseases. You know, it wasn't a desire to be thin that drove me into becoming anorexic. It was a desire to try to get as low of a fat percentage as low as possible. That drove me into anorexia. Wanna know what when you become deprived of food, you start to become preoccupied with food. You start to become preoccupied with food. What I was trying to do is I was trying to get, in my case of anorexia, not all cases are about trying to get as thin as possible. For some people, it's about trying to get as low of a fat percentage as possible. Like, try to get as low as you can with the fat percentage. Like, in my case, I had the desire to reduce my fat percentage to almost 0. Like, wanted to keep trying with getting as lean as possible. For me, it wasn't about trying to get as thin as possible. I was trying to get extremely lean. Because I felt insecure about how lean I was. That is kind of what drove me into becoming anorexic. I was insecure about how lean I was. So I wanted to... because I felt I wasn't lean enough. Wanted to lower my fat percentage, like, wanted to lower it as much as possible. But then I realized, if I went too low, my bones could start to deteriorate. My bones would become a ticking time bomb. Oftentimes, people with anorexia will never be independent unless they're closely monitored. Unless they fully recover. That's what happens when you have anorexia. You'll never be independent if you have that disorder. Unless you're closely monitored. Until they fully recover, those with anorexia will never be independent, like, ever. Well, because they're trying to, they need to be supervised by a bunch of caregivers to ensure they don't die. Because anorexia is a very cruel disorder. What drove me into anorexia? I felt insecure about how lean I was. I was insecure about how lean I was. Which meant I wanted to get as lean as possible. And ultimately I realized that if I got extremely lean, like 3% body fat, my bones could start to deteriorate. If I had hypothyroidism, my bones will have already become really weak anyway. If your bones are extremely brittle, losing fat is not a good idea. If your bones are already extremely brittle. I felt insecure about how lean I was. Like, I wanted to get as lean as I possibly can. Like, wanted to lower my fat percentage as much as possible. Like, wanted to get my fat percentage as lean as possible. I wasn't insecure about how thin I was, because I openly admit I was already thin at the start of my gaming channel. At one of my gaming channel was at its early days. I was already thin, but I was insecure about how lean I was. Like, because I felt I wasn't lean enough for my... Because I wanted to get extremely lean. Because I wasn't expecting to be skinny fat after losing all that weight. I expected a six-pack. Let me tell you the truth. You should never expect a six-pack when you lose weight. Very quickly. Because losing fat kind of requires losing muscle mass, too. Like... I was insecure about how lean I was. I felt I wanted to get extremely lean. Kind of like Bobby's perspective, except that me being so thin wasn't caused by vegan diet, to be honest. Bobby's perspective was lying to you from, like... It's not that I felt I wasn't thin enough that drove me into full-on anorexia, like most people think, when it goes to my eating disorder. It's that I was trying to get my fat percentage as low as possible. I was insecure about how lean I was. I had a desire to get even leaner. To lower my fat percentage even more. And that's what drove me into becoming anorexic. That's what drove me downhill mentally, to the point of becoming anorexic. Of starving myself, literally. Because I was trying to get as lean as possible. This is what it's like to be anorexic. Living with anorexia is a horrible disease. It's a horrible disease to have. It's a pretty horrible disease. It's a horrible disease to have. Not everyone responds to Remeron. Not all cases of anorexia involve a desire to become a Barbie doll. Some cases involve a desire to try to get it as low of a fat percent. Try to lower your fat percentage as much as possible. Just like how it was in my case of anorexia. I'm still in the recovery stage of this eating disorder I have. Because I was trying to get I was trying to get as thin as possible. I was trying to lower my fat percentage as much as possible. Like, till I could see every last muscle fiber. That's how lean I wanted to get. But then I realized from one of my friends it's that trying to get that super lean like that is kind of dangerous. That's when I ultimately learned my lesson. Because if I would have been left to my own device, I would never be independent. Because eating disorder would have gotten any worse, like to where I went down to like if I ended up going down to 130 pounds as a result of anorexia, I'd have to be under constant supervision for the rest of my life to make sure I don't relapse. Even if I do reach my elderly years, I would never be allowed to live on my own. I'd have to be under constant supervision 24/7. If I ended up going down to like 110 pounds as a result of the eating disorder. Basically, the only way to save yourself from anorexia if you already have anorexia is to sacrifice your independence. Like, you'd have to lose your independence to survive. In order to be saved from... Because anorexia is a very cruel... It's a very cruel disorder. I'm not the only one that had to deal with the disorder. Let me tell you, Furious Pete almost died as a result of it. He's one of the most well-known competitive eaters. He had to go through the same thing I had to go through. I know it's really sad. It is a cruel eating disorder. The only way to ensure your survival if you have an eating disorder like that is to lose your independence. It's a cruel eating disorder. If it progresses if the progression is severe enough, you'll never be independent. No matter how bad you really want to be independent, you'll never be independent. Why? It's a very cruel disorder. People have actually died from anorexia. For me, it wasn't the fact that I was insecure about how thin I was. It was about how insecure I was about my fat percentage. Like, I wanted to get as lean as possible. That's what drove me into becoming anorexic. I'm sharing my message with you as a means of raising awareness about this cruel disorder. Those with this cruel disorder will never be able to live. Like, if it progresses to become really bad, those with that disorder will never be able to live on their own. No matter how hard they want to, how bad they really want to live on their own. Doesn't matter. They'll never be able to live on their own. I know this is kind of touchy subject, but I have to raise awareness. I'm doing this to raise awareness. I'm doing this so I could help people with this cruel eating disorder. What I'm doing to help me recover from this cruel eating disorder, I'm working out every day. Like, I had body image issues. Like, I thought I was not lean enough when in fact, like, it wasn't that I wasn't thin enough that drove me into becoming anorexic. It wasn't like that type of body image issue. It was about the fact that I wasn't lean enough. That I wanted to get even leaner. Like, I wanted to lower my fat percentage. Like, I wanted to get it as low as possible. Anorexia is a very cruel disorder. It's one of those disorders you don't want to end up with. It's a very cruel disorder. It's one of those disorders you do not want to end up with. If it wasn't for my mom and my friend, I would have died. If it wasn't for my mom and my friend, I would have died. I'd like to be around for you. I just want to be around, be alive to make gaming videos for you guys, and to send you updates on my series. I don't want my series to end with me succumbing to anorexia. No. I know this is kind of sad. This is a very touchy subject. But I'm doing this to raise awareness. Because anorexia is a very cruel disorder. You don't want to end up with anorexia. People have actually died as a result of this cruel eating disorder. One of the risk factors of anorexia would be sports that kind of requires you to try to get as low of a fat percentage as possible. It's one of those risk factors of anorexia. And I don't want you to go through what I had to go through as a result of this cruel disorder. Anorexia is a very cruel disorder. I don't want any of you to succumb to this. If you have anorexia, I encourage you to do something about it before it's too late. Thankfully, I was very lucky because my mom and my friend was around to help me recover. Because for me, it wasn't a desire to get as thin as possible that drove me to get help. If you know someone that has disordered eating, if you know someone who has an eating disorder, help them right away. Because you could save their life if you help them right away. But help them before it's too late. If you have a friend that has an eating... If you know someone, whether it be a friend of yours or a family member that has an eating disorder, help them before it's too late. Or else they could literally die. I know this is a very touchy subject. For me, it wasn't a desire to get as thin as I could that drove me into anorexia. My goal is to help raise awareness about this cruel disorder. it's not just teenagers that are at a greater risk of developing anorexia and other eating disorders. Anorexia is a very cruel disorder. You don't want to end up becoming anorexic. One way how you could help people with anorexia is by giving them some weights to lift. Because I'm lifting weights as a means of helping me recover from my from this cruel eating disorder that I have. That I'm still recovering from. In my case of anorexia, like, unlike Bobby's perspective, who blamed him being really thin on unlike him, who blamed it on his vegan diet, my anorexia was driven out of a desire to get as lean as possible. Like, trying to lower... The lowest you can go for your fat percentage, if you're a man, and be healthy, is about 6%. That's the lowest you can go and be healthy. But if you get too low, any lower than that, you're gonna risk a lot of health problems. Losing your life to anorexia is not fun. In fact, it's really sad. But I'm doing this, but I'm talking about it as a means of raising awareness. It's one of those disorders you do not want to end up with. For me, like, I'm doing this because I want to save people with, because my goal is to help people with eating disorders get back on their feet. If you want to help people with eating disorders, one way how you can do it is to take them to the gym. Give them a gym membership, because, you know, lifting weights can help with muscular hypertrophy. One of the most obvious signs that you're starving is that suddenly your workouts begin to suck. It was one of those signs of anorexia that I had. The quality of my workouts were declining very rapidly. Is that the quality of my workouts were dropping like flies. Anyways, this should be it for this series. For part 3, for type 3, stay tuned for type 4 part 1. As always, this is Gaming with Austin signing off. But before I go, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel. And follow me on social media for more content like this. I also encourage you to support me on Patreon too. As always, stay tuned for more, and choose.